The U.S. has lost its ability to hold countries like China with some kind of middle ground of more than economic sanctions, less than global nuclear war. What we're really doing is giving an option to policymakers for something in the middle. If you're looking for a different outcome, you need to do something different. If you're doing something different, most people are going to think you're nuts. I don't care that everybody thinks we're doing aerospace wrong. I don't believe that, and I think the results will speak for themselves.
This is Bryon Hargis, and he is the co-founder and CEO of Castelion. And Castelion is making hypersonic missiles. Do you want to just explain what a hypersonic missile is?
It's deterrence in a can. How's that?
Fuck yeah, dude. Nice.
Yeah, so a hypersonic missile is honestly, like, I'm not kidding when I say deterrence. It's deterrence. So some of the problems of the country are that, like, China's built up a huge A2AD bubble, so kind of anti-access area denial around their coastline, and it's exceedingly hard to get in far enough to launch an attack that could credibly hold like targets at, you know, under threat to deter them from taking, like, say, Taiwan. And so hypersonic weapons really do three key things all at the same time. One, they close vast distances very quickly, which is super important because things generally move. They're not static unless you're attacking a building. I don't care what my customers do. It's their choice, not mine.
You're just an enabler.
I'm an enabler, yes.
The fellows.
The fellows want to blow up a building, get the building. I'm all for it.
All right.
But it also goes extremely far. And so, like, that aspect is that it's going extremely at high altitudes. It's going very high where the drag is less, which also helps it go fast. But that helps it go far. And so you can go far, you can get there quickly. And the last piece of that is it's actually highly survivable, meaning that it's hard for them to intercept the weapon. And so all of that combines into being able to hold targets at risk to give back deterrence. And so what's happened over the past several decades is the U.S. has lost its ability to hold countries like peer adversaries like China with some kind of middle ground of more than economic sanctions, less than global nuclear war.
Which is a good thing.
I like that you're smiling. Fun topic. Okay, so this is turning into Between Two Ferns. I like it. So you go between the two, and like the U.S. has given up everything in the middle. Like, that's the problem. So what we're really doing is giving an option to policymakers for something in the middle, like a stronger response than economic sanctions, less than like ballistic missiles.
Less than Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means. Less than Japan.
Well, then we use nukes.
Oh, yes. Sorry. I thought you were offering China, Japan.
Well,
if all your Japanese listeners out there, they should be concerned.
Part of the deal.
Maybe we should talk about how we started the day and why we're so punchy.
So I woke up at like 4:20 a.m. this morning and thought to myself, why am I doing this? Is this even gonna like happen? You invited me on a very interesting excursion. Do you want to just go off of what that was?
Yeah. So Sunday morning is driving morning. And so what day of the week do you get up the earliest? Sunday morning.
On the Lord's Day.
On the Lord's Day. What would Jesus want?
100 miles an hour in the Angeles or whatever it's
Angeles
called.
Crest.
There you go.
Close enough, the two. Yeah. So you get up early, you beat traffic, you cross town. Because I'm an electric piece of shit, we have to charge. So we have to get up even earlier to get there to charge so that we can then drive 100 miles, very spirited, all legal, highway miles, and hang out with the boys.
And just hang out with the boys.
Yeah.
In a factory.
Yeah, in the factory.
Nice.
Yeah. There's good people.
Yeah. You talked in the car, you said that like teasing out relentlessness is the most important thing for, I think, at least the salespeople that you're hiring, but just in general, like what about like being relentless is so important to you?
You know, I think when you look at like a relentless personality, if you're in sales, like you go stop to stop, you get told no 50 times. If that's going to deter you, you're not built for sales, because you're just gonna like getting kicked is like what sales is. So you get kicked till you get to a yes, and you can't give up. But if you want to look at like what is success in any capacity or starting a business, what does that look like? Like relentless, because most likely, not in all cases, there are a few lucky exceptions. Like most cases, like you're going to get kicked multiple times before you even get it started. Then you're going to get kicked when you get it started. And then you're going to continue to get kicked as you're going. If any of that deters you, this isn't the lifestyle for you.
It's over.
It's over. And so my personal view is that like success in business has a huge degree of luck, and you can't control that. But what can you control? You can control being relentless, and the old adage of like make your own luck. So you get kicked and you get up again and you do it again. Not every try is going to be successful, but odds are one of them will. So like what's the most important hallmark of a successful person that or has like the tenacity to have success is they need to be relentless. I think that's the most important thing to screen for.
Do you want to talk about, like, I think you said that you've basically been doing this for 2.5 years now, or like since the company started. What have been the biggest moments where you were getting kicked?
Well, where to begin? So, when we started the business back in the end of 22, like defense was not hot.
Anti-hot.
Anti-hot. It was the anti-hot, you know. And I bring a lot to the game, as you can see.
Who couldn't give you money?
Who didn't want to give this guy money?
Real.
But it wasn't going well. And then you're over here and like, we're doing defense, but we're doing hardware. And like you draw like the Venn diagram of like hardware's over here on like the very hard side to raise money for. And then I hit them with the zinger when we're only going to sell to the government, which investors love. So, you know, getting kicked relentlessly. I actually thought that I had left my job at SpaceX to be unemployed. That was my... It's really hard to look at that face and not laugh. So I thought we were going to be unemployed. It was actually so traumatic to one of my co-founders that he literally like seems to have lost 3 months of his life that he doesn't remember. I had to remind, because at one point I was like recounting the story of like relentlessly getting kicked again and again. And he's like, why are you lying to that person? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't lie to anyone. That was all the truth. And then I had to recount it to him. And he's like, oh, that did happen. I'm like, where were you? So, but the kicks haven't stopped coming. I mean, you know, breaking in like to like kind of an entrenched business and industry and aerospace in particular, which is like very set in its ways, and then doing something extremely different and then having the audacity to try to do something big. Like you get kicked by everybody, including our main customer. Like I do, there's not a meeting in the week that, you know, someone doesn't hit me with a real zinger of, you know, backhanded compliment, or you won't make it, or that'll never work, or this or that. It's tough. Honestly, it's tough. I would assume that like anybody that's doing, you know, if you're looking for a different outcome, you need to do something different. If you're doing something different, most people are going to think you're nuts. And you have to be okay with, you know, them throwing rocks at you. Like that's what the job is. So the only person though that you need to be happy with is yourself and the team. Like, I don't care that everybody thinks we're, you know, doing aerospace wrong, but I don't believe that. And I think the results will speak for themselves in, you know, anywhere from 1 to 7 years. We'll see.
Was that the kind of thing that you went in, or the mentality that you went in with, or has that shifted?
You know, I definitely like knew that this would be the experience and some of the response. I was actually hopefully optimistic that, you know, with our approach for how we were, you know, trying to enter defense manufacturing, that maybe we wouldn't hit the same like type of resistance that I've seen previously. Turns out I was
wrong.
Completely wrong. total dumbass. It's actually been worse than expected. So, from that aspect, like, who doesn't love a good surprise?
When you're kind of like reevaluating, looking forward and trying to predict the future, ideally you're less wrong than you were in the past. Are you expecting it to just get harder from here?
I'm 45, and I'm always expecting it to get harder from here. Yeah. So there's that. All right, cut. There's too many ways to take that one. Yeah, no, I think so. I think as the size of a business scales, like the number of headaches only grows. Like, I don't know if people think like if you become the boss, you just come in and like skip across the factory floor on like gumdrops and rainbows, but it turns out like it's mostly crap that floats to the top that you get to deal with all day, and then spreadsheets, then email. So like
you get to be the like chief unfucker.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I do a lot of delegating to our other co-founder who has tremendous patience in ways that I don't at all times. So, I'm relying on the team, but I mean, truly, like, we come in and, whatever the challenge is the day, whether something technically didn't go right or whether like, something's happening with like customer or like the contract's like all messed up or Congress didn't pass a budget and therefore like all our plans are late on hold. It really just comes down to like, you just adapt with the team to do the best you can. But like, in my view, you got to enjoy the journey. Cause like, I think like there's this fallacy of thinking like, oh, it'll get better soon. Like we'll get out of this. And it's like,
to be honest, it's just going to keep on like getting more complex and stuff.
Yeah. I think that's like completely false to think like somehow like next year is going to be better. Like, no, next year is probably
there's more fires.
It's going to be more fires, and it's going to be something we didn't expect. Otherwise we wouldn't have gotten ourselves into that position, but it's all about how you respond to it. So I think like you build a great team, you empower individuals to like use their best judgment. If that best judgment turns out to be horrific, then you might need to make adjustments. But in general, enjoy the journey with the team that you're with.
How are you trying to find people that are like very flexible, but also extremely hard driving?
Passion for the mission. It's honestly like, one of my favorite questions is to like ask folks like, where do they want to be in 5 years? And when I don't mind, like if their answer involves like some type of like personal growth and journey, but you also get a sense of like, why are they doing this and what do they want to see? And if the only answer you get back is like, well, I want to manage like a huge team of people, you can
do that anywhere.
You can do that anywhere, but like, someone whose motivation is not going to necessarily want to grind with you in the ditch. And it turns out that most of like building a business is grinding in a ditch. So you damn well better be happy grinding with them in a ditch. And I think like getting like that motivation of mission. So like, one of the most inspiring things that in my opinion has happened to us recently. So we had like this giant government meeting. And we went through kind of like our team's intro for like most of the engineering leadership of the company, supply chain, just huge like kind of swath of the company. And the one thing I asked folks to do was tell everybody like at this meeting, who they were, what they do, but also like, why did you join our company? And like hearing the responses back for that, like they could have gone somewhere else. They could have done something else. So-and-so could have paid them better. They could have started an AI company and be worth like 100 billion in 3 weeks. So it's really, it's just, hearing the responses to me, that was like the most heartwarming thing, is just like working with people that care so much, all for their different reasons. And that's cool. But like, we all care. And like, it's much easier to give someone latitude to to use their best judgment when you know, like at a high level, like you're super aligned. So like give them the ability to go do their thing. Like I'm like my co-founders would laugh at me because like I'm not a micromanager. One of them said like my management style is like Jesus has the wheel, which is apt given this morning.
As I'm hanging on for dear life as we're going like 100 around turns.
Yeah. What did you say about the turns? Just like what was a?
I said I don't know, something about gripping the Jesus handle.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what it's there for. You gotta wonder about a car maker that didn't put one on the passenger side. But you know, I think like you know, you can trust people's decision making if you're all aligned on what the high level goal is, and keeping people aligned to that is super important because of course, like if you're fighting yourselves internally, which a lot of big companies, and in my opinion, like this is like how they die in the long run, is you get too many fiefdoms that are like pulling at opposite directions and going different ways, and they have too much time to just, instead of focusing on like how are they achieving whatever their vision and outcome is, they're over there like making sure, you know, Sally's career isn't like, she's not getting ahead and she's not going, like there's just too much time for shenanigans.
It's a whole situation of like unaligned vectors in the organization.
Yeah. As Elon says, like your org is just like the summation of all the unit vectors, and you want them to be pointed as much in the same direction as possible to get the most done.
You are like an SpaceXer.
Yep.
And what have been like the biggest things that you took from SpaceX to building this company?
When you start, you come out of like, you go to like, you go get your undergraduate degree at a very traditional path. And then you start your first job, and I had like different paths. Like I could have I had a job offer from Lehman Brothers. I'm sure.
Was this like
it was
2008?
2002. It would have been fine, I'm sure, for at least a few
You would have
years.
been able to ride that.
Yeah, man, I'd be like so rich. But and then I got an offer from like Shell Oil, and like Shell Oil's progression was like, first you're going to Nigeria, and then you're going to the North Sea on an oil rig, and then we'll send you to Texas. And like as a single guy, that was like,
sounds like a good deal.
That they were going to pay you a ton, but it's just like, oh, that sounds not like interesting. And then there was like, I had like a pathway into defense, which was for me, like what I was most interested into, by far the lowest paying. They couldn't even tell me, I did the job interview, and they couldn't even tell me what am I coming to work on? They couldn't tell me. So talk about a leap of faith. It's like, I mean,
Jesus
they had an
has got
optics
you.
lab. They had like cool things on the table, and no idea what they were doing. But I was like, you know, I have like lifelong passion for physics. So I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I care about. And so, you know, going into that job, you come out of school, and like, you're like, here's how I think I should, like, they give you a task, and here's how I think I should approach my first problem. And the most like the senior engineers like come over and like just absolutely club you to death. And like, that's not how aerospace engineering is done. And then you're like, oh, okay, I guess like college is useless. Like they didn't teach me shit, apparently. And so I come out, and like everything you're doing is wrong. And then they teach you how to do aerospace, in quotes. And you're like, this is the most asinine process I've ever seen. That's totally inefficient. Are we sure this is how it's done? And everything, you know, like the approach is so slow. It's so risk averse. And the moment you deviate from that, like somebody with like vastly more experience than you, that you don't really feel like that you can argue with, is just beating you down. Like that's not how it's done. And of course, being like, you know, 21, you're just like, oh, I guess I don't know anything. Well, at least for me. Some people are psychotic.
Are like, fuck that.
Fuck that, I'm right. Like, yeah. I try to always take like feedback, like maybe you're the one that's wrong.
Maybe.
Unless it's my wife. That one's hard to swallow, but she's usually right.
She won't watch this.
She probably won't, so I can say it. I'm safe. We'll see. she'll tell me that I said that if she sees this. So like we'll probably go another decade. We'll see. But we love each other very much.
Except for that 3D
She always
printing
asks me
stuff.
like, how did work go? And I'm like, do you like, I don't know, could you follow us on Twitter and like, you know, like we launched a rocket. Oh, like she's like, why don't you just tell me about it? I'm like, well, that's why we posted the video. Anyway, we're not social media users.
Right.
So the you know, you get beat up and then pretty soon like you're like in the system and now you're beating up the new guy. So like to the point of your question, like what did SpaceX like was eye-opening? Like everything that you came into like the aerospace industry thinking like this is how you should do something if you don't want to be stupid. That's what SpaceX does. And it turns out it works great. So everything that you were like, I thought we should do it this way coming out of school, and then like it was just beat out of you, like absolutely beat out of you.
For a few years, you're just getting
gaslit.
gaslit.
For freaking like 10, I was in there for like 12 years. It's just like schmack, you're an idiot. And you're like, I guess I'm an idiot. So pretty soon, like you're beating up the new guy and teaching them to also do it this way. And like, I think like the biggest falsehood in all of aerospace is like the Apollo era is done. Apollo era is not done. The Apollo era is done if you try to do aerospace like it's currently done in most places today.
Do you want to just explain how aerospace is typically done?
Think of so everybody does like the system engineering process where you're given a problem, you break it down into like, if I'm going to solve this problem, I'm going to have these requirements. Then you break those down to like, okay, my missile needs to do these high level goals. I now therefore break it up so that like my avionics need to do this, my rocket motor needs to do that, and you decompose it to like low levels. Then you start designing something to like meet those goals. And then you do analysis to like verify this and validate it as you go up the other side of like the systems engineering bee. And that process generally takes like 5 to 7 years for anything of any reasonable complexity. You get to the end of 7 years, you finally build your prototype of your thing and you go test it. It blows up or it like just does something stupid, or like, you know, Jerry left the like, you know, the remove before flight pin in and just like falls into the ocean. Like absolute dumbness. But like, not to say that like Jerry is a dumbass. I mean, we all are at our time, but like
it's just process.
If you don't get to practice or do something, but once every 7 years, you don't get one learning cycle in, how is anybody like, we're all human. Like nobody means to make mistakes. Nobody means to design something suboptimal, but how do you get good at something if you can't like learn and iterate? And if your process takes 7 years, like the reason I left traditional aerospace is damn near everything that I worked on got canceled before it became real, because it's like it gets killed in the design phase because it's moving so slow, and like there's cost overruns and schedule overruns. And so only the most important of important things actually get funded to like through to completion, and it takes forever. And so you have people that come out of school and like will work on one subsystem of one part for one program, and they'll do that for like 8 years. How do they become like an excellent engineer if that's all they get to do, and they don't even get to take it like through the full life cycle? So like SpaceX's approach is like going back to what worked in the Apollo era, which is you just do that same exact process, but you do it under much shorter cycles, and you just do it again and again and again. And so not only do you get good at understanding what the real problem is, and when I mean like the real problem, like engineers are programmed to worry. They worry about everything. And you can spend a lot of time like worrying and analyzing something that actually turns out doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's like not a problem. You didn't know it wasn't a problem, hence why you were worried about it. And so you can actually find out not only what works and what's good and how to make it better, but you can also learn what you don't need to worry about. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Don't think about it. Move on. Stop thinking about it. And then you also learn like production, because you're building this hardware, you're testing it. And like in software realm, this like has a name. It's like Agile or whatever. So it's like obvious, but for somehow we've lost this in like hardware aerospace. Like, I don't know where how we lost this, but I mean, I think I know the motivations for how we got to here, but fundamentally, you get so few cycles and so few practice, and you don't practice building the hardware, and everybody just designs stupid shit the first time through. Like, you don't mean to. Like, I showed you that 3D print I made earlier today. It's going in the trash can when I get home. It's just like it takes multiple tries to get really good at something, as you would expect being human. Like learning to ride a bike, you're not just going to pop on it and wheel off in the sunset. It's the same for like designing anything. And I think like to have a truly great product, truly transformational thing, and to be like ahead of the world at something, what's most important is not that you can sit down and design it like in one go and be the best, which is like what the current aerospace model kind of is. It's really, how can I learn faster than anybody else? And even if I am not the best at making this hardware today, or I don't fully understand the problem like some deep, subject matter expert in some company does, if I can iterate and learn faster than they can, just by like the math of that, given some time, I will be best in the world at this. And that is, in my mind, what's so scary about like, what China is doing, what Iran and North Korea are doing, because they frankly can't afford to do aerospace the way we do aerospace. And they iterate extremely quick and they learn quick. And so even though we all make, we were like making fun of the North Korean missile program, everybody was like media, not like me personally. They iterated till they got something to work.
And then it became scary.
And in my view, like clearly anybody that's allowed the opportunity to iterate and learn something, is going to get there. It's just a matter of how many tries. And so like the most eye-opening thing about SpaceX was setting up the entire business, setting up the entire culture, setting up all the systems engineering, setting up all the prototyping and production, that you can go through those iterations quickly within like the lifespan like of an engineer at work, so that they can learn and get better, that they can teach other people good behaviors, and that you can do it quickly enough so that it's inexpensive enough that you can learn. Because like the other big part about aerospace is a lot of the things that you do are actually very expensive.
It's like hundreds of millions of dollars for a single test.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, when you look into that, most of the cost is actually labor. It's not hardware. And so like SpaceX, for a while there was blowing up stainless steel like it was going out of style in Boca Chica. But that's not the major cost. Like the major cost is all the people working the program. And so the faster they're learning, the faster you're getting through development, the lower the cost. And you're setting yourself up where you can do those iterative tests and afford it. And I think like that in my mind, leaving, being at SpaceX and seeing how well they executed on that, and how everything you thought was probably the way to do it coming out of college that was beaten out of you was actually in fact correct. That was eye-opening. And I think that, having just but a very small role with my contributions, like with what success SpaceX had, but seeing that firsthand of, returning America to the ISS, capturing the flag, I was out there hustling Starlink before we even flew the first two 1010 satellites. And to tell people like, hey, we're going to have a constellation of thousands. And like, I mean, people
like no one had ever done that.
Oh no, they would just laugh at me.
Yeah.
Just laugh. Cause they didn't see, cause it's not that those folks are necessarily wrong. Cause like in the traditional aerospace model, I would agree with them. You could not do what SpaceX did in the traditional aerospace model.
So they're taking some model that basically hasn't worked and they're overlaying that into a company that doesn't actually operate that way.
So in a world where you are unwilling to change like how you approach the problem, correct, you've maxed out. You can't do this. And SpaceX and, Elon specifically and how he set up the company and the culture, like, honestly incredible in terms, because like everybody was calling SpaceX stupid for how they did things, and it's only a matter of time before they fail.
Do you know when that kind of perception shifted?
So I started in 2017, and I feel like it hadn't fully shifted then. There was still like this feeling on um, the launch side, especially that like they still hadn't made it, even though, you know, they were rapidly coming up to the same number of flights that Atlas had. And on the satellite side, it was like, you know, it was all on paper. And so nobody believed that was actually going to happen. So maybe it came into its own like 2019, 2020, like sometime around there, that you could see like a kind of a shift. You know, the Falcon Heavy first flight, and like I think what that did to like energize America for aerospace. Like I remember my wife taught preschool, and she was with like these little kids in her class, and they're all tuned into like the whatever YouTube of the Falcon Heavy launching, and she just took a video from the back of the classroom, and like these little kids just like screaming and cheering watching that thing. I mean, it was absolutely epic. And I think that another like huge benefit and outcome of what SpaceX has done for aerospace, besides like just showing like, hey, this other model, if you employ it, can achieve great gains, was also just getting like the next generation of interested kids to come
excited and inspired.
Yeah, to come do aerospace. Because like in 2002, when I joined up to aerospace, I mean, it was like a bimodal population. It was like you were either like my age and like, I don't know, like people are questioning like, why did you go to like aerospace and defense, or you were like 55 and above. There wasn't much middle ground. In fact, that was one of the things that was talked a lot about it in the industry at that time, was like, how are they going to find new engineers to come want to do aerospace and defense? And like, you don't see that anymore. Like SpaceX, I think, like single-handedly crushed that and getting people interested in space again and wanting to be part of it, and going to school specifically with the goal of
working for SpaceX,
working for somebody else that's doing something that they're passionate about. But like, it became cool again. And I think like that is a win for America.
How did you take that approach when you left SpaceX and you were thinking about starting Castelion? How did you try to basically minimize the number of days between starting the company and like initially getting that little bit of capital to go and actually launch the first rocket and get that test iteration loop going?
So the hard part about starting a hardware business, you either need to be rich already and come with your own money. That's really the answer. It would be best if you're rich and come with your own money. You know, it was incredibly hard to do any kind of real meaningful prototyping, because the magnitude of the dollars just to get started, to do anything, to show anything that wasn't like a gimmick, was extremely expensive. And so
is that like on the order of like tens of millions sort of thing?
You could do it for a little less, but like, you know, if you have like tens of K, does it matter if it's 500,000 or 5 million? Doesn't really matter. Like what, like
you're looking at the bank account and
yeah,
blackness.
Like what do I do?
Yeah.
You know, so we put together a team of folks that, you know, initially everybody was just unpaid, with a plan of like, you know, it'll convert to like full-time employment as soon as we could raise any money. And so we went 3 months with damn near nothing, just working on, you know, analysis and design and like the early things, and trying to win like, you know, early opportunities. Contracts. Yeah. Contracts is a strong
some
word.
semblance of
some semblance of income.
Yeah,
exactly. Because like even when you're beginning and you're starting out, even the smallest amount of a win is huge. Whether it's for showing like investors traction, or just having a tiny amount of cash to like pay people or do something, it's truly huge. So did a lot of business development, you know, efforts, and luckily, you know, having been in like this business for a very long time, it was possible to get some folks who didn't necessarily know, you know, anything about Castelion, but they knew me. And I think like if somebody knows somebody, it does count for a lot because they know if you're a serious person or not and whether they're willing to give you a chance. Because I think that's the other thing that people can forget about, like when you're selling something to somebody, like, yes, you are selling the company and you're selling what the company can do, but a lot of that is also riding on that person's like personal reputation. Like that person is like basically lending their reputation, like, hey, I've never screwed you over before.
All this built up trust over the
Correct.
last, like, I mean, how old are you right now?
Old.
Okay, so like, let's say 42 years or something along those
Very
lines.
generous, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like you're lending your credibility to whoever you work for, because people know, hey, I know Joe would never lie to me. Maybe I don't fully trust what the company is like hawking, but I know Joe wouldn't be there if he didn't believe it. And that does matter. It does matter.
How did you try to, like, I imagine that even if people do trust you, or at least some people trust you, it's still a big question of, at some point, like, the trust kind of does run out and you have to show the traction. And so, like, I imagine that's like constantly running in the back of your mind as you're working on that 3 months.
Eventually everybody gets to Missouri. So you're going, whether you like it or not. Unless you're an AI, then you get a very long leash. So
maybe a rope.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like 100-kilometer long fiber optic tether. I think like whatever I always tell people here is like the top business development opportunity, like activity we can ever do is just do what we said. And it's kind of funny, like no matter like, there's just like, obviously like you want to push on the team and you want to tell them like, hey, we need to get this done by this date. And it's got to be a hard date because like people's schedules will expand to fill whatever time you give them. So you need to make it aggressive, even if you don't personally believe like, hey, we're going to hit that date exactly, but you can't back off of that. Everybody needs to be pushing for that date. And so even if you do something that people didn't think was possible and you do it with less money and you do it faster than anybody else has ever done it, but yet you are now 1 month like later than the date you set, people just hone in on like, well, you were late. And that's fine.
It almost seems a little bit like the Elon situation where he says, he's in the business of basically making the impossible late. Yeah. So it goes from something can't be done to we just didn't do it on time.
I mean, at that level of success, like he doesn't have to listen to what anybody thinks. Like, so
I know, but he only recently got there. Like even like as of a few years ago, there was a lot of, I think even today, there's a lot of people that are very negative.
Oh, still him. Are.
Yeah.
Still are.
And so, but there's like enough of a built trust that people are willing to give him the cash. And
well, when it comes to like getting cash, it's like doing what you said and then executing and then like
showing that you executed.
Yeah. And then having that pay off with like market validation, then getting cash is easy. So like it's kind of funny. Like, if you're having tons of success, like people will just try to shower cash on you when you don't need it. And then if things were tough and you really needed the cash, like you're not getting it.
It's the whole situation where everyone wants to loan money to the guy that doesn't need it.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get that, like, you get like invited to things and free food. And it's like, I could pay for my own food. Thank you. But if I was like literally hungry, they'd be like, you don't belong here. We're not giving you a free meal.
Not at the door.
Yeah, please get out.
Do you want to talk about like what aspects of running this company are really fun for you?
I like when I have the time and when I'm allowed to, I really like working through some of the technical problems with the team. I also like the field testing, like getting out there and doing like a launch campaign or acting as the company's electrician. Not kidding.
Just get out there and fuck with shit.
Part of like the benefit of like having run like an Ethereum mine is like I can harness some electrons.
Wait, are you telling me that there was an application for crypto and it was hypersonic missiles?
Oh,
and
no.
How? Well, I know I'm joking, but like,
It literally is like, so when we were starting out, we were mixing propellant out of a shipping container that was like solar and diesel powered with like battery backup. And so I was the one out there wiring up the inverters and the like home built battery and wiring up the solar array with the guys on the roof, all while not getting electrocuted or creating a fire. It was good times.
Okay, tell me about that story. Like, let's definitely go into that. Early tests, mixing diesel. Go.
So yeah, so obviously like the act of mixing propellant, it's like a hazardous activity. We don't do it here in like, Los Angeles.
A bunch of hydrogen, just big tank of hydrogen in the center.
Well, we're using solid, so at least it's not like an explosive gas, but it's still not as safe as SAS software. So
SAS is dangerous for different reasons.
You could end up with carpal tunnel or something, but
doesn't blow up a neighborhood.
Yeah. Honestly, like I think like one of the surprises for me in like working with like solid propellant is getting a healthy respect for like how much energy is contained and how quickly it can come out when it's angry. That was eye-opening. So
when did you first realize that?
Like for example, we had like this is like a rite of passage. Apparently, we had some Aerojet guys tell us this, but like we got the mandrel stuck in one of our casts. So the mandrel's like what forms the central perforation of like the motor core, and if you don't use the right release agent on it, it just bonds itself to the propellant, which is basically comprised of rubber. And so we went to pull the mandrel out. We literally extracted the propellant with the mandrel like a kind of propellant popsicle. And then the only safe way to get rid of propellant is to burn it. So it wasn't like a failed test, but it was like, okay, we're going to burn this. And it was like a half propellant popsicle with like part of the popsicle still in like, the pop, like in the can, in the rocket motor case.
In the sheath.
Yeah. And when the fire managed to wedge itself up between the case and the propellant and it exploded, it was a beautiful fireworks show. And any thought that like, oh, like, could you run away from him? Like, an accident? No, not a chance.
So how did you do this safely?
Oh, it's kind of funny. Like, we actually restrained it to the ground because some of the guys who had done this before, like if you don't restrain it to the ground, it literally like the force of like trapping the gases between the wall of the case and like the propellant would cause it to like go somewhere. And so we literally strapped it to the ground. It still managed to like shove itself like multiple feet into the dirt when it went, and like fire everywhere. It was incredible. So that was like, okay. So,
and how early into the company did you have this experience?
Oh goodness, that was like just a few months in.
So this was one of the like few early tests. Was when you first started, was a little bit like the SpaceX situation where you had a certain like very little cash at the beginning, but then even after having a little bit of cash, was it you only have a few attempts to kind of get things right?
With what honestly, this has been one of like the great reliefs of not doing space. In space, that's like generally completely correct. You got a couple tries, maybe 3 or 4 at best, and you are toast out of cash. So if it doesn't go right in that amount of time, like you are cooked. What we're doing is honestly so cheap to go test that it's never been a fear of like, how many tests are we going to have to do and they have to go right or we're finished. It's really been a case of like metering out growth. Like how quickly are we going to hire? How quickly are we going to go build like, and get out of this, propellant shipping container in the desert and get to a real building. Like even when you do like your series seed, you can barely afford like a lease for a real building because it's like that's going to be a significant fraction of like what you have. So you have to be like very careful in how you spend. So certainly those challenges were the same, but it was relieving to think that we can have many like failed motor attempts with basically inconsequential. Like the consequence, again, like per usual with aerospace, is getting to market validation, getting to technical progress before we ran out of money due to labor. And so it's like, how fast can you go do testing, while of course keeping it safe? Because like, you know, once you just like see the energy stored in these things, gives you a very healthy appreciation of how particular and safe everybody has to be, just because you do not want an accident. And that is one of the things that like we focus a lot on is safety and like keeping people safe, and like what are the procedures and checklists, et cetera. So it's really just making sure that everybody goes home with the same number of fingers and toes they came to work with. That's the general goal.
Do you have the same philosophy where I think, especially in the early days of SpaceX, Elon would kind of come and tell people each day, I believe, that they delayed or didn't, you know, make some milestone happen, it was effectively like $10+ million?
Yeah, we actually, I think we're very forthcoming with our finances. Like I think we're much more open than most companies. So like all of our employees know our financial position, because, you know, I think if you're going to treat them as adults and you want people to have the same level of like knowledge of like how much runway do we have, it shouldn't be, you know, hiding a problem from them. Like I share that with them. And I think that actually, like, we've never had a tough time, but if we were to be having a tough time, the fact that I'm being honest with everybody about exactly where we stand and what the risks are, they could judge for themselves, I actually think would pay dividends. So part of that metric of what we share with folks on like a monthly basis with the finances is like, what is the daily burn rate? And we look at that from a perspective of, I want folks to be judicious with their spending. I want them to like, you know, think about what they're doing. Cause like you can go buy a mill or something. I can't turn that thing back into salary. And so I let them know, like, this isn't like my money. This isn't the company's money. Like, it's our money. And when we run out of our money, none of us get paid. And so everybody knows like that number of like what the burn is per day, because I also don't want them to be so frugal that we're making stupid choices. Like if we're going to delay a test event by a week, what's the cost of delaying a week versus just getting it done? So everybody knows like our burn rate so that they can make an educated decision of what they think we should do. And we try to make sure like in that like monthly update that we actually
give a broad overview.
We give a broad overview, but I think the main thing to try to get across to our team and our employees is how to think about the problem, and teaching them like it's not just the CFO's job to worry about this, it's everybody's job to think like this. Sure, I would expect that, you know, he knows more than, you know, engineer A, but I want everybody to like have this frame of reference in mind and like how to strategically think about spending money versus, you know, whatever the alternatives are. And I think that, again, this gets back to, I think one of the most important things that you can do in a business is make sure that you're not just like giving out like job responsibilities, but you're really helping people learn how to think about a problem. Not to say that like I know how to perfectly think about every problem. Like I'm always learning myself and taking feedback, but I do think that sharing what is typically like executive level thinking with all levels of the team is super important. And it's in my experience, it's not because they can't understand that. It's because they've never had anybody come show them how to think about the problem like this from a company-wide perspective, and not just like their own perspective of like, hey, I'm supposed to get this done by Tuesday, and that's what I'm doing. I want people to actually think about what the strategic level as well. And like we run our like weekly schedule updates. Like a lot of times they can be very tactical, like with what's going on here and there, like this week. But I also try to like bring back what if we don't, what are we not doing today that if we don't start, like we're completely screwed in like 6 months, something that you're just not going to fix in a day, and trying to think through those things as a greater team. Certainly that's what I spend a lot of part of my time thinking about, but I can't, I don't see everything. Just making sure that other people feel like they're empowered to like bring up what the possible issues are is important.
Are you trying to basically just share the information or like the necessary information to help people understand like how you guys are moving as an organization down to like the finest things so that they can make the right calls individually?
I think the most important thing is to like share why. Like, here's what we are doing. Here's why we are doing it. Here's what the decision process was, so that they see the example of that. And the way that they will improve and be able to lead one day is, through that iterative experience. And so they have to be trusted to start somewhere. Like, you have to give somebody a chance, and you have to expose them to it. So making sure that they know like why the business is making certain decisions. Like, I actually think we're a very open company in terms of like talking about everything that's happening in the business, talking about our finances, talking about like what's happening on the business front, talking about what I think is the most important at like our all hands meetings. I hope people value it.
I imagine that they do, or else they probably wouldn't be here.
It's kind of funny. Like, so as you become like, I'm a very affable person till I'm not.
I've only seen one side of what Bryon has.
I haven't seen Killer Bryon. No,
Killer Bryon.
I feel like I'm very easy to approach, and I'll find people that are scared to tell me something. Or I said something in passing at a meeting and they took it as gospel, like they're just like doing something that makes no sense because they didn't want to come back to me and tell me, hey boss, like that's dumb because of X. It's so like one of the strangest experiences of like running a company is like making sure I don't say something that has unintended consequences, with people like going off and doing something stupid because they didn't want to tell me like I was being an idiot. So having like healthy feedback loops through the company that don't always just like come directly back to me, I think is like truly important. But that's like been it's been interesting at times.
How have you kind of like fostered that? Because I know it's very difficult, especially as like companies scale and you start to have like many employees and people aren't just interacting with you on a every single day. People probably become a little bit more of a naturally, because you're this authority figure, they kind of, even if you don't mean to, live a little bit in fear of like, you don't want to piss off the boss kind of thing. How do you help keep that information cycle and flow going?
I mean, I think there's a couple ways. So like there's talking to folks like in an unofficial capacity, like, hey, I'm not here to like interview you or, like have an official sit down meeting, but just like catching people, like, taking a break, eating a snack, just talking to them. I used to try to actually go out and have like happy hours with the team and lunches, and it is freaking impossible to have enough happy hours and lunches. Like, I'm also on the road a lot, so it's like very hard to make that work. But and then like having like direct, like my co-founders Sean and Andrew. Like, one of the things that I truly value in Sean is that he lets me know when I'm screwing up immediately.
In no uncertain
terms, how much I have disappointed him. And I value that. I truly do. I truly do. It is brutal at times, but I know that I've disappointed him, and he will let me know how, usually immediately. I like to pay it forward and do any way I can to like embarrass him or make him feel uncomfortable. I just relish those moments, but it's all honestly healthy. Like, you got to make sure like people talk about, do you want to be a solo founder or have co-founders? Like, I can't honestly imagine trying to do like this alone. And that like goes beyond just like the three of co-founders, but like just having like a great a great team at all levels, like it's just so freaking tough. And like, I'm not the best at everything. I know that. I really like, we made a very conscious choice of let's make sure we have the right mix of skills in like the initial team to make sure that like my gaps are covered, my blind spots are filled, and that the folks that are in those positions aren't going to be too shy to tell me like, hey boss, you're doing like all the wrong things. Like we have to be able to talk really honestly to each other. That's, you know, it's like a marriage, but you can't get out of it. So it's more,
it's like a marriage, but any breakup is like a lot of money and a lot of
terrible.
pain.
So if you need to like pick who surrounds you extremely carefully, but communication is like, and trust, there's nothing more important to that. I can't stress that enough. And I just can't imagine like, there's like a lot of solo founders out there and like, good Lord, like,
I'm chewing the glass.
You chew the glass, you're chewing that glass alone.
Yeah.
So some days I just like, you know, I throw my serving a glass to someone else and I go home.
So when you were starting out the company, how did you think about like deciding to have, you know, even if you are going to have co-founders, you have to trust them on a very deep level, or else you wouldn't be giving up a big chunk of the thing that you're going to start. It's basically like, again, the whole vectors alignment thing. How did you find two people that were similarly aligned to you?
I think it's super helpful to like know them beforehand. And in my case, like I had worked with them for a long time beforehand. You know, they had plans to go do other things. One of the things that happens at like any place with like regular vesting is like every vest date, everybody who's potentially leaving, like will suss other people out who are potentially leaving and be like, hey, what are you doing? Here's what I'm doing. And so, you know, through that process of, you know, sussing other people out, you know, it became very apparent to me that, you know, it wasn't like a plan to like form the business with these specific people, but it became very apparent to me like the value of we could potentially like start the business with. And, you know, you don't know if they're going to join you or not. So, you know, in those guys' cases, like they were planning to do other stuff, but shared the vision with what I was planning to do. You know, and it spoke to them but I knew who they were as people. And I think that, I knew like Sean would tell it how it is. And so like for me personally, that's like who you want, like right by your side is someone who can tell it like it is. Like I can't think of anything more important than being kneecapped if you're riding too high, and telling you when you're screwing something up. Cause you know, if you listen to everybody, you're screwing something up 100% of the time. That's not healthy. You need somebody that you trust to tell you when you're screwing something up that needs to probably be corrected, that you can't see, that's a blind spot. Like, I don't think anybody comes in thinking like, you know, I'm screwing this up and I don't care, but it's really just like having somebody that can point it out to you. And I think that ability to like find the right set of people that you're going to go through, you know,
trials and tribulations with those persons.
Yeah, you're going to go through a decade of like digging the worst ditch in the world with, as well as like the best highs. It needs to be like a set of people that you can depend on. And if you screw that up at the beginning, it's bad. I mean, it's same with like your investors, honestly. Like when you get a board member, it's like, you know, you're getting hitched in a way that's very hard to unhitch. And so you have to be very careful with like who you work with. It's really important that it's not just about the money. It's about how am I, like, do we share visions? How are we going to do like when disagreements, like how do we handle disagreements? Cause it's like, they're a different person. You're going to disagree with them at times. how are you at getting, through something with them? Do you trust them? I think that's critically important as well. Sometimes, like in an act of desperation, like you just have to do what you have to do and just do something for the money.
Have you ever felt that throughout the company's history?
No,
Or
not at Castelion. Past life at another small business, like we got forced into a very suboptimal situation to kind of avoid a hostile takeover of sorts, and very much driven by bad investor behavior. And that's never happened here, but I've also specifically aligned things to make sure that couldn't happen. It gave me certainly something to like be cautious about, including like be very judicious about who you take on board the company, and like, are you aligned with the vision? How do you handle disagreements? Do you think they would stab you in the back if it suited them?
if interests weren't aligned?
Yeah, because like it's not a reasonable expectation to think that your business is just going to like monotonically go well. So it's not enough to know like how are they going to respond in a good time. It's really like if things totally
shit hits the fan.
Yeah, how are they going to be then? Because that's what really matters. And same for like your co-founders and the other folks that you work with. Like, how's it going to be when things are going terribly? And that's the best way to frame the decision, because like you need to think like it's going to suck, but we're going to do it together.
What's been the biggest moment where you were going to make a decision, but because you had Sean kind of like watching over your shoulder and making, helping you make better decisions, you decided to go in a different direction?
I don't know if I have a good example of like where we like pivoted the business to something because he said something, but I have like a tendency and a trait to get riled up and vent as my way. Honestly, it's like my way of like managing stress is just like let it out instead of eating it all the time. And he'll pull me aside and be like, get your shit together. Tell me like, be a man.
Has that had like kind of negative impacts on the team that you didn't even mean to have happen?
Well, yeah, that's what he's saying. Like he's pointing out like you shouldn't have said that in front of everybody. Basically, virtually slapped me around. And he's right. But it's at least it's tough to always remember like everybody's looking to you in like some like let's say like unfair situation, and whatever feelings you have towards being treated unfairly, like they're then amplified for the team if you like let it out in the wrong way, even though they're totally justified. And so he's got a very high EQ, so he like points it out and tells me I'm being an idiot, which is totally fair. So I love him for it. But I think like having that role, and it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be met by like a co-founder, like but like you need somebody like in a company who can
kind of, you can bounce ideas off of, or
let
trust.
you're being like, let you know you're being stupid. Don't do that. And like take the feedback. I think like taking feedback and like analyzing like new information and like acting on it, it can be very tough, especially like when it's like about your own like tendencies. It can be very uncomfortable. But it's great when it works. It's tough, of course, but it's really good to have somebody that can point that out and you can get better. And I think like one of Sean's defining traits is like, it doesn't matter however good thing just happened. It's like, it could have been better. And he's not wrong. Could have been better. Somehow we could have performed better. But like that level of never being happy with the outcome, like you can always do better and
continually
continue
dissatisfied.
To push. Yeah. And I think that's like one of his defining characteristics that particularly awesome.
Brian Chesky had this line where, as he was scaling Airbnb with Joe Gebbia and Nate, he would go to, and he was very comfortable and willing to go to other high power people that were like maybe a few stages ahead of him or in slightly different industries to kind of learn how to do things and how to grow as like a leader. And he's constantly thinking to himself, how do I kind of grow ahead of the curve of my company? Because if you're not, you're basically failing. How have you kind of evolved from starting out as a leader to now?
I think that's one of the coolest things about being a founder of a business is like you're in the network of other founders, and when you start, like, you don't know how to do this, you don't know how to do that. You go to people that are like a stage or two ahead of you and you talk to them, and like the unwritten rule being a founder is you're going to pay it forward with somebody who's behind you, because you got a lot of help to get to where you are. And so like we're starting to get to the phase where I can help pay it forward, and it's difficult because it's like the most limited thing I have is like my time, but I always try to take a call with somebody else, especially if it's like they just want to ask some questions about how do I do this, how do I do that, or what to look for, how do I shape my round, et cetera, et cetera. There's just, it could be organizational, it could be any number of things. All I can say is like I wouldn't be here without some help, and I think like the thing I can give back is like helping someone else on their journey. And so, trying to remember that even when you're stressed, because there is no more hours in the day and I have no more time to take another meeting, and God help me, I don't want to do another dinner. I remember that, pay it forward. So I think like the founder community is like incredibly cool in that regard, in that everybody knows what it's like to just go eat glass, and they're willing to help other people who are about to eat a lot of glass. So in that regard, it's just like a really cool experience to be part of that, and just know that and some folks have horrific founding stories. Like honestly, like we had it like I thought we had it hard, and I have heard from some other founders, and I'm like, I take back everything I said. Like we were walking in on easy. Some of the things I have heard, which I won't repeat, are like, oh my God, like that sounds awful, and they pulled it off doing great. Happy for them. Like, and that's where you get back to like Relentless. Because good Lord, like the world will wake up and punch you in the face, and you just need to get back up and keep going. And I think that's like the hallmark of like what's going to make somebody successful is like, yeah, you need a bunch of other skills as well. But how often are you just willing to take a punch, take a straight right to the face, and just get back up and do it again?
What's your process? Like, I know for everyone that I've met that does get punched, there's some kind of way that you just cope with it and then get over it and then get back up to, get back on the horse the next day. What's your kind of like solution for that? Comedy?
I love turning it into a joke. Yeah. We get, whenever we get punched, I try to think of something funny to say about it, even though like I'm like it
on the inside hurting bad.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm like, it's my way of venting, but like say something funny. Yeah, I think like there's a lot of ways the personalities like handle like adversity. It's going to happen regardless. I like making it into a joke. Some people though see that and they take it as like, I'm not a serious person because I'm turning it into a joke, but it's really my way of
well, I think even Elon does that, right? He goes from like ultra serious to like laughing and cracking jokes in a very short period of time.
I don't know that he's doing it though to like turn like some terrible situation into it, versus like he doesn't think it's that big of a deal. But he is most of my interactions with Elon were him laughing or telling some story, but like most of the engineering meetings were joke telling of some degree at some point, which I appreciate it.
I think it's horrible if you basically spend your entire life building something and then you like wake up one day and you realize that you don't really enjoy the environment that you've created.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, if you're going to come in and grind, you may as well enjoy it. So, and I think like, yeah, again, like you got to surround yourself with the people that you just want to like dig that ditch with, because my God, the ditch is never gonna not need digging. So it's I wouldn't believe anybody who just like had like came in and said something was super easy. I'm like, what planet do you come from? They probably exist because they got like, again, I do think that one of the things that's never accounted for, there is a degree of luck in everything. Like no matter what's happened in your life, there's probably some element of luck to it. Like you're in the right place, the right time to meet somebody. But the thing that you can control for is making sure that you're willing to do it again, to make your own luck. So just keep trying. But I certainly recognize like there's a lot of things that have gone right in my life that yeah, did I work hard? Absolutely. But there is a degree of luck, in success and close calls that would have been like, game over in some regard.
In Castelion's case, like what have been the key like luck moments where things went your way or they didn't necessarily have to?
We've had a lot of success with the Navy, and yes, I knew some of the folks at the office we were talking about in a different capacity. But we came in and like the way I described what we were doing, there was like one of the things I said, and one of our customers told me this like just a couple nights ago after like 8 really intense drinks. But they they basically said one of the things that I said to them that made them like believe in us as a company, somebody was telling us like how hard it is to like design a weapon and what it has to go through and how it's damn near impossible to get it qualified, yada yada yada, and so on and so forth. And I came back in the meeting and I like wasn't thinking about this at the time, but I said like, well, the pilot survives it. So clearly it's doable. And it was like at that moment, it connected with that person who's like, that basic statement, like, well, it doesn't kill the pilot. So clearly it's doable. That was apparently like for them, like a defining moment in our relationship, our customer vendor relationship of like, hey, this guy, I mean, it's like a very pithy answer, but I do believe it's true. Like it can't be impossible if you're not killing the pilot every time, like, the aircraft lands. So it's very much like why I think it's impossible. It's not. So you have to be willing to try. I'm totally willing to say that I don't know exactly how the design will shake out and what exactly will be done, but I do believe it's doable. It's not impossible.
For the iteration process, what's it been like going from just having almost no money in your bank account to now having like a lot more cash to work with? How have you like shifted the way that you operate?
I didn't find it hard because I've personally been down on my luck several points in life where I've had no cash. And so it's just like, this is the thing you work through. I think like obviously you have to be very strategic with how you're going to spend that money, because you're like trying to optimize like how do I get to the next hurdle where I could get some more cash? How can I make it? But like operating with nothing is honestly sometimes it's freeing.
It like constrains you and to what you can do.
Yeah, I mean it constrains, like exactly, like it takes some things completely off the table. They're not possible. You can't possibly afford that. So I think like operating in a resource constrained environment, which we still do, even though like we have a bankroll now, but like we still operate everybody resource constrained, because you can start to make dumb decisions if you forget the basics. Like money still matters, and that's why we go through like the whole ordeal every month of reminding people like it's not the company's money, it's our money. And if it runs out, that's our paycheck. Like there isn't like a magical different fund for salary. It comes down to a little bit of luck, a lot of strategic thinking about what's the right thing to do and how to like deploy your capital. For us, investors tend to think about things as like technical risk, market risk, team risk. how do you, with the war chest you have, whatever size it is, what could I do in each of those boxes that they care about to just take that down a notch, to prove, like, from like the purposes of making it to the next round and raising some more to keep going on your journey. What do I need to show them? Same with the customer though, but the customer's risk are going to be different than like what the investors view like your overall risk posture is. So what am I going to do for them to knock down like the walls and to get them convinced about what we're doing, what we're building? So in our case, our whole portion of like the vision was iterating our way to a new missile design with capabilities that are going to be very exciting for the country at a price point that's much lower than what's traditionally possible. So how are we going to prove that? Because it's going to take a lot of capital to get to that end state. How do we prove that over, without that much? And so it very much became like, well, what demonstrations can we do with the money that we have and the team that we have? Because like obviously when you're starting out, you're like missing some significant gaps of skill sets for being able
resource constraint on both capital and people.
Yeah. And you can't, like, in my opinion, you can't like go away for 2 years and just work on like that 2-year goal. So like, what are we going to be able to show in like a few months? And so picking those targets. And for us, it was like a series of flight tests that allowed us to unlock the customer in the sense that they could see like, oh, you now have more than PowerPoint, you're building hardware, so you could get the next contract, and that next contract helps reduce the market risk for the investors. So now they are willing to put in some more money, and you did it in the time frame that you said with the team that you had. And so figuring out your path, I think it's going to look similar for every company, but it's also going to, like, the specifics are going to be very different, and figuring out how you like lay that in is really important, because regardless of the company you have, you probably only have a couple, maybe, you don't have many major missteps in there that you can do and then get back on the path. So you're very easily like out if you screw that up. But not having like unlimited resources was not like an unnatural position for me personally. So like I was like comfortable operating there. And I think that that's very helpful. As a founder, because you can't expect that it's just going to be easy sailing and raining cash. It's going to be a grind of some form or another.
On the customer side, like, how did you think through getting to a point where people would actually like want to give you some contract or pilot or whatever?
I mean, for working with the government, it's always going to come back to credibility and like the perceived risk that they're taking and betting on you, even minute amounts of money in comparison to like what some of these programs are sized at. And the key with working with the DoD in my mind is actually getting to that hardware stage. This is like demonstrations and going out and launching and proving like some aspect of your technology works. This is like why it is so difficult if you're doing software for the DoD. It's like a uphill battle, because like, what do you demonstrate? It can be like incredibly hard, because quite frankly, like that's not how their brains are wired as a customer. For most folks, they really respond well to like seeing hardware demonstrations. And so, our roadmap was very hardware heavy, which was natural because like we're building a physical thing. But there's actually a ton of software in our system. And quite frankly, like I'd say we underplay our hand, both on the investor or customer front on the software side, but it is a huge part of our strategy for how that's going to enable us in the future and like what type of capabilities that's going to have. But we don't spend a lot of time talking about it. But from a customer perspective, I don't spend a lot of time talking about it because it's not worth the return of investment of time and energy, because they're not ready to hear how I'm gonna, employ this new, concept of like deploying weapons. They're just trying to understand like can these yahoos actually build a missile that works? And so talking through our software strategy isn't going to help that. It's just going to fall on deaf ears. And so we focus all of our time and attention of just showing like hardware progression, but the software will be a huge component of the future.
Yeah. Was there any moment like with the Daimler deal on Tesla, I think in like 2008, 2009-ish, where I think in order to basically keep Tesla afloat, Elon had to go build a sporty electric go-kart in effect. But because, you know, the Daimler people come in and they're expecting some PowerPoint presentation, and then he's like, well, actually, do you want to just go try it? And the car is like out in the parking lot and they start zipping around, and then it ends up, you know, like $40 million or whatever it was for Tesla. Has there been any moment like that where you could just show something and that like let you leapfrog?
When you're doing business with the government, it's never like quite as simple as like, I came to you, I showed you this thing, and then we went in the room and we signed the paper and we're done. It's always like so much more involved and drawn out that it never feels like that quick of a kind of response process. But I would say that absolutely, like back to like my point, like the best business development activity you can do for the government is just doing what you said. We just continue to do what we said. You just keep going back and you're like, the last time I was here, I said I would do this.
No, we did.
And we did. This is what I'm doing next. The first time it'll be thought of as like, that's a fluke. But you do that enough and people do start to believe you. And then they start to put trust in you to like give you, you know,
More leash,
bigger slices to go do more. And certainly, so it hasn't been, it would be very refreshing. Like the commercial world's really nice in the fact that you can do something, convince somebody, and it could be like a big deal. Like it happens all at once. It feels like so much slower and drawn out, but it certainly is still like tracing back to like, I demonstrated the thing and now I get to do the next thing. Even if we are already working like 2 steps further down, you know, on like 2 steps further in the future, you still have to like nail the basics and then go back and show how you did that. And just prove that you're doing what you say. That's like the most important thing.
Is there any issue with, I know I've talked with a few other like defense companies, and it seems pretty consistent that at least the like current players underestimate the timeline that things can happen in. And then if you actually estimate your timeline as you think it can actually happen, you might under or overbid them. But because they say that they can do it in less and then they can't, you basically lose a contract short term because of that. Has that been an issue?
I have a lot of experience in, you know, government sales. And so I had a pretty healthy feel for like what's going to happen. This year or last fiscal year that just ended in September, like we even exceeded my own expectations. Like we got multiple contracts in the last like week. That's not what I
envisioned.
Yeah, I didn't envision it starting on week 1 of the fiscal year. Like that would have been naive, especially with how things have been going. But getting basically everything in at the last week of the fiscal year is that exceeded even my expectations. So I think like if you do a lot of government business, or in our case, like it's all government business, you have to have contingency plans for things don't go at the speed, because there's a lot of parties involved that can stop it at any time. Like you do have to convince like the Pentagon, like your direct customer, but then there's like multiple offices on the executive branch that can change things or slow things down. And then of course you have, you know, Congress who's going to, you know, authorize and appropriate the funds. And that things could get held up there for completely, you know, they might think your project's great, but it doesn't matter.
Some part of a bill, and it's
correct.
like
The bill doesn't pass. It has nothing to do with you,
Yeah.
but you're caught up in it. And I think that you have to have like those plans of like, here's what we expect to happen, but here's our plan. If that does not happen on that timeline, what are we going to do? And so being able to survive a bit longer and, you know, kind of take your foot off the gas a bit if you had to survive. We've been very lucky that like we haven't had to make, frankly, like hard choices of like slowing things down in any way, because we've had private capital to backfill any like hole from like government funding, customer funding. It is painful at times, because like if you came through faster I would have had to sell less of the company from all the employees to get us there. But there hasn't been like hard choices. Now, in certain cases, like there are folks that they always talk about like straddling like the valley of death, which really means that you did something with the government, you were like in science and technology land developing it, and you were getting funded to do that, but you didn't work the acquisition side far enough in advance. And so it's a multi-year process if you're coming in cold. And so what happens is like the S&T side says like, great, you're done, and like kind of like stops funding your widget. But then it takes 3 years to get a program or get integrated into a program over here. And then you're just kind of like stopped for an extended period of time that is at best flatlining. And that kills a lot of companies because of course, like they're expecting growth, and like the sudden like flatlining is extremely damaging. And so you see a lot of companies that are like heavily dependent on government revenue, having to like back off and do layoffs, et cetera, just because of something that they didn't have enough of a contingency for, but maybe wasn't their fault.
Has the like way that you plan even 12 months, 24 months, 36 months in the future kind of shifted as things have started to work well? Like you've built the trust, or you're building trust over time, and you're able to maybe see a little bit further into the future with every little bit of trust that you build?
I mean, certainly like we have like a like tactical level plan of like what we're rolling out with the customer, but like our 24, 36 month vision is set and has been set for a long time. Like I'm 100% focused on how do we give the country back long range non-nuclear deterrence. That's every decision we make internally. Like we ask that question, does this make that better? Not make it better, or can't really tell, but we're asking the question. And so, you know, from like an internal perspective, the entire company knows what our goals are and what we're pushing towards. From an external perspective, you can't go in as like this size company and necessarily tell them your grand full vision, because
they don't care.
They don't, well, it's not that they don't care, but if you go too far, they think you're crazy or not credible. And that's happened to us actually in some cases.
What happened in that?
I mean, I've been called a liar. They think we're lying about what we're doing or what our capabilities are, or what, you know, what have you, or performance, cost, et cetera. The frustrating part of that is, yes, my estimates are estimates and they're probably not perfect, but they're not also an order of magnitude off. But we'll get dinged for that in the future regardless, but that's okay. But you know, the goal of the company is like published, you know, far and wide internally, but it doesn't mean that we necessarily roll everything that we're going to be doing out to outside all at once, because it can seem too ambitious.
Yeah.
But I think you have to have that level of ambition to keep everybody making the right long-term choices. So back to like everybody being able to decide like what's the best interest of the company. They need to know where we're heading long-term and why it matters. And I think that we've done a really good job internally at trying to keep messaging that. Like we're growing headcount. Honestly, I really wanted to like know everybody's name at the company. And now I come in on Monday and I've been gone like the whole last week. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know who that is. So, but it's still a goal. It's still a goal. But we continue to have like, you know, meetings where we'll share, like we'll continually revisit, like, what is it that we're doing so that the new folks also, you know, start to get experience with like, why did we make choices in the past, and why are we here, and what are we doing, so that they know that process and that flow, so that they can see like the bigger picture. And I hope that that's coming across. If they're watching this and they don't feel like that's the case, they should tell me, and we'll have a short meeting to help make sure that everybody's on the same page, because I do think that that's like extremely important.
How many people is this now?
We're right around 150.
Oh, wow. Like even for 150, it feels like you guys are punching way above your weight.
I actually think that is true. One is we're very focused. Like everybody's rowing the same way. We're only doing a very limited number of things that are all highly related. Like it's basically like, I think like most of the defense industry is like a consulting model. Like cost plus contracting is really like butts and seats, and you don't ever turn down new work. You do this, you do that, and it can be very scattered. We're very much like a product model in the sense that
More like Anduril.
yeah, I mean, I think like now Anduril has like, I don't know how many products Anduril has, way more than us. We are working very selectively on what we're doing because I think like having everybody focus on the same thing, you get a lot of efficiency out of that. But that's also like the best way to break in my mind, is just do a damn good job on one thing, not a half-assed job on a lot of things. Especially when it comes to, working with the Department of War. I think I keep saying DOD earlier. Sorry, DOW. But I think like that, like doing what you said, doing it extremely well and having a reputation for that. But it also it's amazing like what the power of a small team can do. People think that you must need like to do some like big idea. You must need like this huge team. And quite frankly, like a huge team can,
just a bunch of different people going in different directions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
God help you. Like if you give any like large group, like the ability to make decisions and they can all counter each other, like the bigger the team, the less likely they can get to consensus and the more likely you're frozen. And so small teams can gel quicker and then move out, especially when given like the authority and the accountability to do that. And it's incredible what you can do with just a small number of folks. And I think that we will obviously, like, we're growing rapidly and we will get much, much larger, but that focused approach lets us, I think, punch above our weight. And it's really just focus. It's just, we get more output per individual because they're not multitasking throughout the day. Everybody's rowing the same way.
Did you like come to that philosophy of focus? Like I know with the first few years of SpaceX, especially, it was just one thing, and that was just like Falcon, right? And like
wasn't there back then, but that would have been cool to have been. Wow. I do think like part of SpaceX's success is, yes, they don't have a ton of products. Yeah, you got Falcon, Starship, Dragon, Starlink, and Starshield. Like it's fairly limited, but they're leveraging that into a ton of markets. And so if you think like your cash outlay is going to scale with like the number of different products, but if you can just make them more versatile and capture more with what you have, like obviously that has tremendous payback. I mean, your most limited resource is the engineering time that you have as a company to put into something. And so that kind of like caps out like the complexity of what you can do. And the worst possible case, in my opinion, is to go after something that is just such a difficult problem that you're going to need to be like a medium to large business just to have the resources to tackle it well. You have to set yourself up with like, what's a meaningful thing I can bite off with like the size of the team that I'm realistically going to be able to make. And I think that you can then scale that into much bigger problems in the future. I think the venture community is always like, just go big or go home, but they don't care if you die. In our case, like I really want to see Castelion make a difference. I can't make a difference if the company dies on the way. So I do want to see us tackle like even tougher challenges in the future, but like the way to do that in my mind, it's not necessarily the go directly to that hardest thing, because I think the probability that goes smoothly or the customer adopts it is close to zero.
Yeah.
So the optimal path is to, do the medium hard thing, scale, and then do the hardest of hard thing. And that's, how we'll get there eventually.
At what point does it make sense? Like you're focusing on one thing right now, and it's actually only like 2.5 years into the company. That's ridiculously short period of time to be doing anything, at least in defense, I think. Yeah. At what point does it make sense to go branch off, and after you've really nailed one product, go into another product?
The cycle time with like doing anything with the government is usually like a couple years from like concept to like even doing a prototype. So we are certainly looking at like what do we do next, and like we're in that like early prototyping and concept development phase, knowing that it's going to take some time to get there, but we have to have our eye on like, you know, product one, and doing a really good job on that. Now, in our case, like obviously we're taking like, you know, it's not like we're going off to something totally different for what we're doing for product two. We're trying to stay focused, but like we can leverage like the engineering effort that went into product one and try to bring that over in a way that allows us to leverage a lot of the learning without spending the same time, you know, re-engineering it. So I like to think that our first missile is the slowest missile that we'll ever build, not by like its actual speed, but by like time of development. We should be able to do like our second weapon faster than our first, not only because
you built the muscle.
We built the muscle. We've got some things designed. Maybe it's not the exact design, but we're not starting from zero. We're currently building, you know, production facilities from scratch. It would be nice if those were already done. There's a lot of things. It's like, you know, I think running a startup's like, you know, you're like assembling the car and like bolting on the wheels while you're trying to drive on one wheel down the road. And that, you know, ideally, once you built the car, like it can now go faster. So that's, I think we can do even better in the future. Even though I do think that, you know, 2.5 years in aerospace is super fast. It is frustratingly slow being in it, because it's like, I want to get there even quicker. But there's a lot you have to do as you build the business that is not easy. And so I'm sometimes jealous that, like, you know, if you just did like a pure software play, you potentially could move out quicker, because, you know, you don't have to go build like 1,000+ acre like production site in another state. Like that would be easier.
How are you thinking about like scaling and getting production ramp going so that you can actually just build these things? Like, have you reached production hell yet? Or is this no?
I fully expect to get to live like on the floor of some
ungodly place and fluorescent light.
Yeah, hopefully they're blinking like Joe versus the volcano. That would be ideal.
Some strobe music in the background just to wake you up as soon as you fall asleep.
Hopefully loud banging from like a forklift. But yeah, no, we have not hit that point yet. I fully expect to hit that point. I think a large fraction of the company is going to end up like living at a production site in the near future, and it's going to both be truly awesome and suck.
Do you think it was helpful to live through like the Starlink ramp?
Yes, it is. Now, to be fair, like I wasn't working like the manufacturing. Now, I would go out there a lot and interact with the team and the engineers, but I wasn't personally
on
like,
the line
or moving, like, you know, refactoring the line and doing anything. So it would be more helpful had I done that as my job, but that wasn't my role. Now, I will say that we have like an extremely talented team that has done that directly in the past. But I do think that it's not necessarily like getting it perfectly right on the first try. Like, we're already factoring into our schedule that we're going to get the factory up and running in like a low rate initial production. And we are planning that there is something broken about what we are designed that we're going to have to go change. So it's already in the schedule to basically
unfuck things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think it won't just be once. We have it in our schedule to do it. But that'll be an ongoing thing of like, you do it, you learn, you get better at it, and you decide that, you know, past me was an idiot. Why did I ever think that was a good idea? But that'll come through like pain and suffering, as with anything good in life. So I'm actually looking forward to it.
You're
like
excited.
It's going to suck. Yeah,
I gotta imagine, like, but by the time you're actually experiencing the pain of trying to get this thing running in like an efficient manner, you've kind of hit a milestone where you're like, finally
Oh,
we get to do
exactly.
this.
Like, it's going to be exciting to like see it come together in a probably like haphazard, terrifying, like brute force manner, as with anything good. But it is an exciting phase like to get to and like start to build out, because it's one of those things like I think it's always kind of funny, like whatever, no matter what you've done, you get through the end of it and you think
hard part's over.
yeah, oh yeah. Well, I actually I never think the hard part's over. This is what comes with age. It's the hard part is never over, but it's kind of like you just battled through that, and you almost never celebrate because you're like, wow, that was a complete shit show. We could have done that better, knowing what we know now, and so you don't take the time to celebrate because you're like, I'd give that like a 5 out of 10. And then you're like, okay, we're going to go do this new thing. That's going to be good. Well, at least some people think that. I'm like, we're going to go do this new thing and it's going to be a 5 out of 10 too, but it will get better. But like, it's kind of like that iterative process. The downside of that is it never feels like you've did a great job doing the thing. It's like you battled through it and you just kind of like, collapsed on the other side of the line. Like running a marathon. I've never run a marathon, but I can only imagine. I did do 100K once, but I didn't run in the whole thing, and I basically collapsed on the other side of the line.
Yeah, but I mean, I imagine that the way it works is you're doing the 5 out of 10, but by the time you've gotten to a point where you're doing like an 8 or at least a 7 out of 10, you're basically moving on to the next problem where you're going to be doing a 5 out of 10. So the operation in the background is doing a much better job. You just don't necessarily get to experience it because you're putting out the last fire. You're
always putting out a fire.
Yeah.
But you do get, with anything, you do get better. Like the more times you fumble your way through something, you're going to get better at it. But you should expect that you're going to fumble your way through it. If someone were to tell me like a plan that didn't involve fumbling, I don't believe that plan. Like, this is probably going to be miserable.
You just bake the misery into it.
Yeah, just bake the misery into it. Like, just be honest.
That's the expected outcome.
Yeah. So
if it doesn't happen, you're probably missing something.
Correct. Yeah, you just don't know what it is yet, but the misery will find you. Don't worry. I think like you have to just bake in time. Like every schedule that we have internally, like has some either second or third iteration of time baked into it. And people are like, well, what are you doing there? I have no idea. Something is going to be wrong. I expect that we need to do it again, but I don't know what the thing wrong is yet. Because clearly if I knew that, I wouldn't design it wrong in the first place. So all I know is that like the gremlins are there and they're coming, just plan for them.
Plan for the unknown unknowns.
Plan for the unknown unknowns, because they're there and they're out there. They're going to find you. But I just take that's just life. So, and honestly, it's like keeps things fun. You just come in and you're like, what happened to us today?
What broke?
What broke? How are we screwed? What crisis are we having? You may as well enjoy it, because like that's the ride you're getting. But you knew that when you signed up for the roller coaster.
Yeah. I don't think you most people don't start a company expecting it to be a smooth ride. Like, people are excited to
hope
feel
not.
even the downs. Like, at least when you're down, you know that if you just keep on going, you're gonna eventually get the upswing and start.
Honestly, my personal experience is like the upswing is almost not noticeable.
It's just this. You're just going down and you're like the five.
This is an odd feeling, and then someone's like, "Oh, no one's beating us at the moment." You're like, "Oh, is that what that feels like?" I can't hardly tell.
I'm so numb to it.
It's honestly remembering to take the time to like pause and be like, "I think we did something good." It's almost hard because it's just like, because there's usually like it still wasn't perfect, so there's something that didn't go quite right, but you're like everything but one objective was met during that test. Like, that's pretty good. But instead you can choose to focus on like the one thing that didn't go right. I think it's important to remind yourself what is going well. Because I do think, like, again, with the spirit of like being relentless, like you're just going to be continue to go through that for.
Do you try to juggle that a little bit? Because I know even though you may be able to kind of experience that ever downward but always upward sort of situation, do you have to kind of remind yourself to give the people, or celebrate with the people on your team?
Yes, I think as a company culture, like one of the bigger failings that we have is like taking a little time to like celebrate the wins. Like usually the win was delayed, and so now we're on to the next thing to keep to the schedule, and there's like no time to take a break, and everybody's exhausted.
You forget to order the pizza.
Yeah, no one orders the pizza. There's no one around to order the pizza because everybody's doing something else. Yeah, so now I've assigned one of our employees to like, can we please do something nice for the company once a quarter, because we just seem to not ever do anything fun. At least plan to be fun at the beginning.
Don't you feel it though? Don't you feel the fun?
Oh, I feel it.
Yeah. Final question. What's the hardest thing you've overcome?
Oh man. God, everything. There's a lot of things that are hard. So I like early on, raising money was brutal, like just brutal. Huge focus on like what we didn't have, who on the team was missing. So many conversations with like the no as the outcome. Since 23, like in defense, like raising money has obviously been much easier.
That's when all the VC funds kind of rewrote that into their LP agreements, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, and then, I mean, which they did because they want to invest in as a category.
They thought that there was going to be big companies and they could make a lot of money.
I mean, I think they're right. I don't think it's going to be like an unlimited number of companies, but I do think there's going to be some like real winners out of this batch. I think, since then, so like that got easier, but you go from a customer side, there's like going from SIBRs to much larger contracts. There's a lot of more people that you have to convince to get to a yes. And that has been, frankly, like it's been a very exceptionally painful process. And this kind of goes back to where, I thought it would be a bit easier to get around that. And I was completely wrong. There's still just healthy fear of, new entrants and venture-backed startups. Technically, like we're doing much more complicated tests now. Some of those are, they're not necessarily easy, and there's been some challenges there. That's the kind of challenge that I think is actually a lot of fun to work through, though, because it involves something you can control. Maybe you don't understand or know what the problem is, but like at least the path to tackle it. How am I going to go about figuring it out? Sometimes, like with these other problems, like it's almost like a bureaucracy problem, or like how do I convince that bureaucracy to trust me, and like what am I doing wrong?
Is it a little bit like you look out and it's just a bunch of fog and you don't really know even what the right person to go to is
I mean, like, yeah, or like
happen?
Somebody is obviously not pleased with us and you don't even know who it is, like but there's clearly like you've upset somebody for some reason. But so I like those kind of problems where you don't fully control it. Like, and like an example of like not being in control is we're trying to do increasingly more complex, longer range testing, and it's very difficult to get range access for the types of testing that we're doing. Given that if you're not prioritized as like a national level priority, right? Like they're making the time in the room for somebody else. Now we have had like tremendous support recently from the government, but that was like a barrier that we had to go knock down. That was not easy. And there's still challenges with it in the sense that, one of the things that like you go through the process and everybody has to do this, like if you're launching anything anywhere, is you got to submit all your paperwork for all the safety documentation. Somebody assesses it, gives it back to you. They really expect that your configuration is going to be static for that whole time that they're assessing it. And if that time frame is like a long time frame, but that's really not like what we're doing or how we work. And like, so,
trying to have tighter iteration
Yeah, they
loops
want to
and
have tighter
constantly improving
iterations.
things.
And I've discovered something is like could be made better, but that means changing the configuration for like the next test. And so that's like it's not like just a us challenge. That is like a national level challenge of like how do we maintain safety standards? How do we make sure that we don't put, you know, public in harm's way? But how do we not slow down testing to only have a few tests of something new per year? Because that's not enough. That's frankly not enough. And at least in hypersonics, this is why China has, quite frankly, come up and passed the US in terms of capability. I mean, it's not like they have smarter folks. It's that they've made it so that they can go test constantly. And like that process of testing is learning. And so they're learning faster and it's paying off over like multiple decades. And we have to do that as well to get back. Because frankly, when you're dealing with like something like really complex, like hypersonic flow, you can model it. You can do like numerical methods and you can model everything, but it's so complex that your model at best is probably incomplete. And secondly, it's only as good as like the parameters you feed it, which are probably wrong from an initial guess. And that leads to, and it's like can be highly nonlinear. So it leads to just like terrible answers that you can't trust. And the only way that you can get to an analytical model that you can trust is to go anchor it by actually doing the test. Now, whether that's a flight or, you know, spending time in a, you know, hypersonic wind tunnel. But you have to do the testing to actually improve the model before you get to the point where perhaps you can make a design change to not use the model or not use the testing, like to use the model to do the output of what
it's like a catch-22 of you can't do the thing until you've done the thing.
Yes.
But of course you can't do the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's difficult.
Yeah.
So I think like, you know, as we're going forward, like those are the challenges. We're about to enter manufacturing hell. It's going to be awesome. Yeah. I probably put like, maybe I'll put in a dirt bike track. Cause like, yeah, you need to like, you need to be able to like burn out the stress somehow. But I think like, you know, what's like really, I think very positive, like right now, like at this moment in time is aerospace is cool. Manufacturing is cool. Like I think people actually want to do these jobs, and there's some people that have been doing manufacturing the whole time, but I think there's like a whole new set of people that want to come in and work on these challenges and, you know, put in the calories to do that fight, because everything is painful. Like just building like a large site, the permitting and everything else, it's like everything is hard. Nothing is easy. You have to really want to do it. It's
nothing is easy.
Nothing is easy. It truly is like, I mean, like, you know, we're doing like archaeological surveys and it's just like, God help you, they find like an endangered, I forget what it was. Like there's some kind of endangered
species.
Yeah, but it was more something, it was like desert shrimp. I like, I'm not kidding. It was like desert shrimp, but the desert shrimp like attracts some like endangered owl that eat the, whatever it was, it left me like, come again, like say what?
And China.
And we can't build here because of the what?
Here you go to the hypersonics for China.
Yeah. And like, so you have to like, and I do think like, it's really in like those rules are in place for like good reason. Like we have like, I'm a huge fan of like being a good steward of the environment, because I'm big into outdoors. And I want, you know, my kids and their grandkids and their grandkids to like be able to enjoy going like and outdoors. So I say that like joking, like, but it is important. Like, how do we take care of things, but how do we not stop progress doing it? But I think at least now, like there's a whole like new kind of like generation of folks that want to like take that challenge on and go build. And that's freaking cool.
Like the wind is finally in your sails sort of situation.
Yeah. Well, just, yeah, I think building and looking forward, is really like ascendancy for the country. And it's really cool that people think that's cool. And so, like the whole like Gundo bro, kind of party bus movement, which I was too old to be on a party bus. Grandpa stays home, but I think
Driving his car, driving his Porsche at 120.
Whoa, that would be illegal. I wasn't going that fast
Right.
for sure.
Keeping it to 70.
I think though that like that belief of like
You can go make change.
you can't go you can just go do things, and I think like Jim, right, from Sin Cut Sin, like hearing his, like he had some response to someone online after the interview, the podcast that you did with him, and it was basically like, it turns out you can just go do things. Super freaking cool. It doesn't matter what you're building, hypersonic missiles, mail order parts, like it's freaking cool. And I'm just like, I'm like proud to be like a little bit part of that. And I think hopefully it sticks, and like hopefully this country gets back to building, because we used to be good at it, and we offshored a lot, but we can get back to it because it's solvable. At least in aerospace, it's solvable, but maybe not doing the same approach that got us to this problem, but it is solvable. And like, I have faith in that. And quite frankly, like, yes, I do hope for Castelion's success. Like, I mean, I'm obviously all in, fully betting on that. There's always an opportunity to be completely broke again. Looking forward to that. But even if we have success, the thing that I think like would be great to see is if we are extremely good and we drive others to be extremely good too. Like capitalism works, and it would be great to see some of the, I'd say, kind of incumbency, which I think has suffered like some cultural rot. It would be great to like see them kicking ass and taking names again, like the way I thought about them when I was like 10. Yeah. And I'd love to see them. I'd love to see them get there. I'd love to compete. Because, and I think like this new crop of new entrants and like defense tech, I like for sure some of, I'd say, like the incumbents are going to die, but I think that some find their roots and become their best selves again and get back to kicking ass, because that's what made America great, is quite frankly, like our military power since World War II kept the world incredibly safe and allowed for a lot of other amazing things to have happened that wouldn't have happened without that strength. And so like for my kids, especially, like if they want to join the military, I'm fully supportive of that, but I'd love to give them like a world where they don't have to do that unless they want to, and keep everybody safe. Like that's what I think we're building here. We're building deterrence.